All right, guys, welcome into the Gashouse Gang here on a Friday. Bernie Miklasz, Kevin Wheeler with you for the second straight day. I apologize about that, Bernie. Sorry you got to put up with me 2 days in a row. But
man, making up for lost time, brother. We're all right.
But that's the nature of the beast. Matt Pauley would normally be in this spot, but he's off today after covering the winter meetings for us down in Dallas. So many thanks to him, by the way. He and Claves did a fantastic job. We had the Countdown to Opening Day show last night, which was phenomenal. We heard from Oli Marmol there and John Mozeliak and Katie Wu. So a lot of ground covered here in the last week, even though it didn't turn into a ton of like direct Cardinals action yet.
Right. And that, I think they set the table on some things, and we'll get into Nolan Arenado in a little bit, but I think certainly they expedited that process. They moved it forward. It's just a matter of when they complete it and with whom they complete a trade with.
Yeah, really good point. All right, so we're going to get into that. You mentioned Arenado, and we'll talk a bit about how his market and Bregman's market work together. And you actually made an interesting point off the air about whether or not Arenado might be as good an option given the numbers we're hearing for Bregman. So we'll get to that. Right. We're going to talk a little bit more about Oli Marmol. We're going to talk a little bit, I think, later on about Bill Belichick if we have time. But let's start with kind of the breaking news here in the last half hour or so. The Brewers and the Yankees are reportedly in agreement on a trade that's going to send closer Devin Williams to New York. For Milwaukee, they're going to get starter Nestor Cortez, and they're going to get a minor league second baseman named Caleb Durbin, who was not, when I checked MLB.com, he was not in the Brewers or in the Yankees' top 30 prospects. But when you look at his numbers, he had a good offensive season at AAA this past year for the Yankees and then hit well in the Arizona Fall League as well. So I don't know where he fits. We do know that the Brewers lost Willy Adames, so they might shuffle some things around in their infield, and maybe Durbin plays a role somehow, some way, sliding into second if they move Bryce Terang over to short. We don't need to break all that down, but it's just to kind of paint the picture of what Devin Williams gets. Devin Williams was considered one of the most significant relievers on the trade market, along with Ryan Helsley. And I wonder, if this teaches us anything, because Milwaukee's clearly in a different spot than the Cardinals, right? I mean, this is a move for them to try to be better in 2025. And they felt like, at least it looks like, they felt like they needed a starter more than they needed Devin Williams. But your take on the deal and what you think this could mean for the reliever market related to Helsley?
You know what, you hit on a great point there at the end, and I of what you were saying, and I hadn't thought about it because I frankly didn't know about the trade until you and I were chatting before we started today, because I was looking up some other stuff. But I thought that when like a Devin Williams would be traded, okay, I just assumed if he would be traded, given the way the Brewers operate, given that they have an excellent player development system and their whole thing is drafting and developing players, and they do an exceptional job of that. I just assume they would trade him to try to just add more to the treasure trove that they have of really good young players. But you make a great point. The Brewers want to win. They want to win in 2025. They're trying to set themselves up to win. And Nestor Cortez, listen, 21 through 24 for the Yankees, he was at a 3.33 ERA. He's been inconsistent, but he's a talented guy. The only question I have from the Brewers' standpoint is, what do they do for a closer? I mean, because Devin Williams is just outstanding. I know he's had a couple injuries here and there. Last year was a back issue that kept him out almost the first half of the season. So the Brewers always seem to have a bullpen solution, so it's not like I'm going to lose any sleep over that. But to your point, to your question, and I'm going to be brief here because I did a preamble on some other things. My gut reaction is that until I know more, this is the gut reaction. I reserve the right to change my mind upon getting further information. Is that my expectations of a potential Helsley trade are lower. Now, I could be wrong about that.
Based on this deal.
Yeah, based on this deal. But my original gut reaction, my first gut reaction is that, okay, they didn't get a lot of young players. They didn't get young prospects, so maybe the Cardinals probably won't either. But then you hit it. Maybe they weren't looking for prospects. Maybe they wanted a kind of a proven starter. So it's a really interesting trade.
Yeah, the way I'm looking at it from the Brewers' perspective, and again, this is all about setting up the Central Division where the Cardinals are and the different goals that Milwaukee has compared to the Cardinals. Milwaukee, to me, is very clearly staying out of the starting pitcher free agent market. Like,
Right.
they need a starter, but they don't want to go spend $15, $16, $18 million a year, even on a short-term deal for a guy. So you trade your closer who's going to make $10 million, and apparently in the deal, the Yankees are putting money in it. So somehow, some way, I'm guessing it just balances out the two salaries. That would be my guess. Although I don't think Cortez is going to make more than Williams. But either way, for the Brewers' perspective, you're trading away a closer who's probably going to make $10 million. You're getting a starter that's going to be below the free agent market value for a starter. And then on top of that, they had Trevor McGill close last year when Williams was hurt. He had 21 saves, a 2.70 ERA, and he throws 100.
Did very well.
Right, like they just find those guys, which is what you were talking about a second ago.
Yeah, and I forgot about him, which is stupid because he was very prominent in Milwaukee, building that lead in the NL Central before Devin Williams really got going again. So, yeah, interesting trade. But, the Brewers are definitely – it's not like they're backing off, not at all. And I think just to go off track just a little bit here really quick, I think, there's been an expectation or a belief that, well, you never know in the NL Central. It's a weak division. No one else is really doing anything.
Right.
So maybe the Cardinals can sneak up on some
quiet.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but first of all, I kind of rejected that a little bit at the beginning because Terry Francona is managing in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said was like, well, one thing we got to do is we got to get our players to play better. And we'll get them to play better. There's too much talent for them to continue down this path. Terry Francona will make a huge difference in Cincinnati because the talent is outstanding there. The second thing is the Cubs are getting busy. And, they appear to be the front runner to get Kyle Tucker in a trade. And Kyle Tucker is an outstanding player. And the Cubs have some other moves up their sleeve. I think they're going to activate their initiative to try to take control of the Central, to be more aggressive. Now, I don't know where Tom Ricketts, the owner of the Cubs, is going to draw the line financially. I don't know. But if they can get Kyle Tucker and the two dudes that cover the Cubs for The Athletic are outstanding, they seem to think the Cubs are about to get a real aggressive this offseason. So I don't know that the premise is like, well, the NL Central sucks. The Cardinals can compete with any of those teams. I would, if one of our people watching this kind of believe that still, put that to the side for a while. Let's see what else transpires this offseason.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And, we're even seeing, just to kind of expand on that, we're seeing the Pirates being rumored to be thinking about trading starting pitchers to get bats. They're not we know they're not going to play in the free agent marketplace for the big bats. But when you're dangling Mitch Keller, when you're dangling Jared Jones, I mean, I saw Jared Jones. It was a rookie last year. The guy throws 99 miles an hour and, had a really nice year. Had a couple of minor injury things, but had a really nice year. That's a valuable piece. And they've got more lined up behind him, which is kind of their point, right? Like, they got a guy named Bubba Chandler who was at AAA last year, who's probably going to be ready to take a spot this year. So if they're going to stay aggressive, and maybe trade some pitching for a bat when they already have Skeens at the top of the rotation and several others. Yeah, I think your point is right. The Central Division might not be just, quote, there for the taking like it maybe has been in the past.
Yeah, and we're all hot for action in terms of the hot stove league and this and that, but that's why I just wasn't really accepting the premise that this thing's wide open simply because of the time. It's like people were starting to say that in the middle of November, the second week in November. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Nothing's happened yet. How do you know what these teams are going to do? We did know what the Reds were going to do because they hired a guy who's arguably immediately goes back into baseball as either him or Bruce Bochy, best manager in the major leagues.
Right.
And with all due respect to David Bell, who I like personally, he was not a good manager at all. And I've always laughed because people are Cardinals fans don't really know what a bad manager is. Not really. They think they do. if they had to watch David Bell for 162 games anyway.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I'm just saying. So anyway, yeah, we all should just kind of settle down about making NL Central prognostications and where the Cardinals fit. The Devin Williams trade is a perfect example of that. There's still a lot of transactions to go before these teams head to spring trading.
Really good point. So Garland here has the point about the risk involved in not trading Helsley. What if he gets hurt?
Right.
I think it's a good point. We raised that a while back. It's kind of the plus and the minus. But I think you and I agree, Bernie, that at this point, you're only selling Helsley if the price is what you want it to be.
Right.
And the problem is that the free agent market and even the trade market, as we see with Devin Williams, is loaded with back-end relievers. I mean, there's still tons of potential closers in the free agent market. So your chance to trade Helsley might be at the end of this when somebody's left standing and they don't have a closer.
That's right.
And then maybe you can extract the price that it requires to make a deal.
Yeah, the risk factor injury with Helsley, I've pointed that out, writing and talking about it a million times already. So I'm well aware of that. And he does have an injury history. And one of the best things Oli Marmol and Dusty Blake did last year was that they set up a system of exactly how they would use him. They would eliminate save opportunities that lasted more than an inning.
Out ones, yeah.
They really protected him and reduced the risk of injury. They did a really good job with that.
Yep.
And that would be a model for any team going forward with him. But yeah, he could get hurt. You never know. The one thing I was thinking about, I was having a conversation online with someone last night. And, of the two guys we talk about trading because we assume they're going to be walk year, I think Fedde and Helsley are in a different situation. I still think it's highly unlikely that the Cardinals and Helsley would agree to a contract extension, after the season. I still think that's I don't know how to gauge it, but I know Chaim Bloom's history tells me he doesn't believe in giving long-term contracts to relievers. He thinks they're volatile, and you never know when they're going to blow up. I think he gave Jansen, when he was the general manager in Boston or the guy running, and I think he gave him a 2-year deal. I could see them trying to get Helsley to stay on a 2-year deal, but I don't know what Helsley and his agent think about that. But Fedde, and I had somebody trying to talk me the Cardinals can sign Fedde. You give him 4 years, $44 million. Oh, you're going to give him the Steven Matz contract? And Scott Boras is going to say, oh, hallelujah, absolutely we'll sign that. I mean, the starting pitching market is absolutely cuckoo. And Eric Fedde is going to cost a lot of money after the season if he stays healthy. You're not going to get him to do the discount thing. There's at least a chance Helsley would be agreeable to something like that, but I still have my doubts.
All right, it's Bernie Miklasz and Kevin Wheeler with you here on the Gashouse Gang. Bernie, in a second, let's get into the Bregman and Arenado conversation that we had talked about. But before we do that, let's talk about your friends at Saliga.
I love Saliga Heating and Cooling, and I love talking about them. They've taken great care of the Miklasz family for 16 years. And we didn't know who to call at first when we said, well, we got some old stuff. Our air conditioning systems, watch out. And it's like the heating system. Don't know what's going on with some of the stuff. And we called Saliga because someone had told me about them, and they have been taking great care of us ever since. This proud, independent American standard heating and conditioning dealer, has been doing this for St. Louis family since 1927. And the Saliga family, 4 generations, still own Saliga Heating and Cooling. So they can take care of anything you need, whether it's commercial or residential. They have that American standard lineup of great equipment. They have the Priority Club plan, which I think you should become a member. Again, I would never recommend you do something that I personally haven't done. We've been members of the Priority Club. It's a maintenance program that gives you peace of mind. They take care of stuff. They check on stuff a couple times a year, make sure everything's working right, whether it be before the summer hot stuff or the winter cold stuff. And it gives you peace of mind. And it also prevents, I think, saves you money a long time because they can catch a little problem before it becomes a big problem. So if you want to find out about that and a lot more at Saliga, financing options are available all the way. You have to be subject to credit approval. But go to their site and find out the list of all the services at SaligaHeatingandCooling.com. That's SaligaHeatingandCooling.com. The phone number is there for you as well. Thanks.
All right, Bernie. So let's shift to third base. You and I were kicking this around earlier. We've been trying to find fits for Nolan Arenado. There's nothing really new on that since we talked about it yesterday. But you raised an interesting point to me, and I thought we could expand on this a little bit because,
Sure,
like you, I share some concerns about Alex Bregman and how it projects out long term. He still does some things extremely well. He's a guy that controls the strike zone, as they like to say, right? He doesn't swing and miss. He doesn't strike out. He does walk. He's not a big bat speed guy. He's not a big hard hit rate guy. He is a good defender. And I should say better than good. I mean, yeah, good's probably the right term, right? He's not elite Gold Glove, but he's not average. He's well above average. He's a good defender at third base. But he's obviously a handful of years younger than Nolan Arenado. So let's talk about that comp. If you're in the Bregman market, should you be considering Nolan as an alternative, not just if you lose out, but maybe instead of Bregman?
Well, to me, it's really interesting, and I don't think it's been discussed enough nationally because I think everyone sees Alex Bregman. All right, he'll be 31 next season.
Right.
Arenado will be 34 next season. You look at the two, and you look at the bad year that for his standards Arenado had last year, and there's this assumption like there's a huge gap between them, like who's better offensively, huge gap, right? I wouldn't go. Listen, there is a gap. Bregman's better offensively than Arenado.
Yeah.
I would argue Arenado is still superior to Bregman defensively at third base. But the thing about Bregman is, and I shared you this in a pre-show text message, he is showing signs of decline on his own. Can I just do this real quick?
Yeah, lay it out.
I know. He, if you look at, for example, OPS plus the last 3 seasons, 134, then 122, then 118. The arrow's going down. Baseball Reference has a category they call it's just offensive WAR. They judge a player simply on offense. Forget the defense and all that. So here's Bregman, offensive WAR, OWAR as they call it, 5.1. Then it was 4.3, and then this past season was 3.5. Arrow going down, right? And the OPS, the arrow going down, down, down. So here's the point. With Arenado, you got 3 years left on his deal. And with the money that the Rockies are paying, it reduces his deal from $74 million to $64 million. And then if the Cardinals are willing to eat a portion of that, if you think about the cost, what it could be, compare that. Even though Arenado's not as good offensively as Bregman right now, that's not really the point. The point is that Arenado's liability is basically 3 years, and you get the great glove work at third base, right? The teams that are going to sign Bregman, and the latest speculation is the Red Sox are in there, along with the Astros trying to keep him, the Yankees, the Detroit Tigers. The Bregman deal is going to be 5-6 years, maybe even longer. And I've seen some projections. It could be 180 million. It could be 170 million.
Yeah.
Maybe a shorter term, it would be 130 million, something like that. 5 years, let's say. So people say, well, what is Arenado's contract? What is his performance going to look like a couple years from now? It's a great question. But what is Bregman's offensive performance going to look like 5 years from now or 4 years from now? I don't think this is cut and dry as people think. So my point, and I'm sorry to go on, and I know you got a lot to say about this. My point is that Arenado, in some way, in terms of the risk factor, he might actually be a better value, but you have to be smart enough to realize, again, Bregman is going to be signing a long-term deal for 170 million, 180 million, whatever, right?
Right.
That could be a huge liability down the road. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
No, it's a great thing. And look, I think we both agree that if you just compare the two players, Bregman's the better player. Like if Nolan was a free agent now, he wouldn't be getting the same kind of offers that Bregman's going to get. So Bregman's clearly better. But what you're talking about is the balance of it all, right? Because when you mentioned the what gets reported is that Nolan's owed $74 million. But you're right, 5 a year over the next 2 years belongs to the Rockies. So really it's 64. If you tell the Cardinals, hey, you've got to eat that $15 million extension that you put on the back end for the last year, and we'll take the deal. Well, now it's down to $49 million over 2 years or over 3 years for whoever would be acquiring him. And I think we all agree it's not going to be a top asking price in terms of prospects in return. It's maybe going to be a middling thing where people are in the lower half of your top 30 or something along those lines. I don't think it's going to be with any prospects of real note. So if you're budget conscious and you'd rather minimize risk, yeah, you are accepting that right now Nolan is a little bit less offensively and at least as good, if not better, defensively.
I think I definitely think he's better.
Yeah, I would agree. I
was looking at all the defensive systems, and they'll tell us it's definitely Arenado
for sure.
A pretty significant advantage still, although Bregman's fine.
So if you're a team that if you're Houston, I'd rather have Bregman because Bregman means something to the organization. He's been a part of your championships. He's a part of your leadership core. You drafted him. And again, you're going to get the first 3 or 4 years where he's going to be better than Nolan. But if I'm the Yankees and my primary goal is to get better defensively, I don't necessarily want to commit to another 7-year contract. I'd rather hold that back for the next time a Soto type guy is around. I don't want to get bogged down when I could do something shorter term. If I'm Boston, I might look at it the same way. Say, look, I just want to get better defensively. Nolan's going to hit 6th for us, so it's not that big of a deal. So I would agree that it's a lot closer than we think. Bregman's better. Very clear. Nobody get this wrong. Bregman's the better player. He's the better hitter right now. At the end, it'll probably look like Arenado looks right now, but it's a matter of, do you want to put out the $170, $180 million over 7 or 8 years? Or would you look at, with the Cardinals maybe eating some money, $55 million or so for 3 years of Arenado?
Right.
That's not that crazy. $15 million is very reasonable annual average value for an elite defender who right now is an average hitter.
Kev, and if you saw me looking down just a little bit, I did want to look something up while we were both talking because I can multitask, believe it or not. For example, I think this actually underlines our point that we're trying to make here. All right, last year, I just went to Fangraphs. Last season, Bregman was the third highest rated third baseman in the majors. He had 4.2 WAR, wins above replacement, the Fangraphs version.
Right.
Well, down there at number 6 is Nolan Arenado because of his good defense.
Right.
Arenado was 3.4 WAR. That's less than 1 win. So, when I saw that, I'm like, well, wait a minute. 4.2 minus 3.4, that's minus 0.8. I mean, that's how close they are, at least based on last season. And again, Bregman has shown signs of offensive decline. It's more gradual than dramatic, but as the numbers I relayed to us all earlier, his numbers are going down. And, even though he's hit very well on the road, playing half your games at Minute Maid has got to help you. Although, again, he's been fantastic on the road as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Again, it's part of the different levels of this. And when you consider, I don't know exactly how the luxury tax is counted, Bernie, in the terms of if the Rockies are chipping in money and the Cardinals are chipping in money, does the AAV still hurt you with the luxury tax? Because that's a part of the conversation too. But Bregman's money will all be on your luxury tax,
right?
Unless you can do some of the deferred money, which might knock it down a little bit. It's a complicated thing. But for fantasy owners, draft Bregman over Arenado this year. But if you're a team that's looking at both, it's not as big a gap as you might think. And you mentioned 1 win in WAR. WAR's not perfect, but WAR's a nice little guidepost.
It's always it's a bullet point just to go by.
Right.
And it does take in all facets of the game: offense, defense, base running.
Yeah.
It incorporates all three. So it gives you a good idea. But I repeat, the difference is the length in the contract that you would have to sign Bregman to, as opposed to 3 years at Arenado, and the money, the annual average value, I think would be, I'm assuming it's going to be much higher for Bregman. And the reason why I'm repeating this is because I know, for example, if I do a video on this later on my YouTube channel, there'll be 5 comments right away say, well, but Arenado's older. Bregman's better. Well,
Yeah.
he's better right now, but what the heck is Bregman going to look like 3 or 4 years into a 6 or 7 year contract? That's the point we're trying to make. It's all about contract length.
Right. Is he $130 million better? Is basically what it ends up being. I mean, like, it's over the life, not up front, but over the life of the deal. But teams weigh that. Teams weigh the total amount of money, whether we think that's accurate or not, or proper or not. That's exactly what they're going to look at, is the risk involved. The more money, the more term, the more risk is the way it's viewed. It's the Gashouse Gang here on all of the KMOX social media accounts and on KMOX. If you're listening in the evening, you're hearing us live on the radio. Bernie Miklasz, Kevin Wheeler with you here on a Friday. Bern, let's shift over. You intrigued me with a couple things yesterday that you wrote and discussed on your YouTube channel, The Bernie Show, and obviously at Scoops. You talked and wrote about Oli Marmol and managers and a certain former Cardinal who's running into some things in the Winter League right now. You set the table for us because it was really intriguing. And I always love talking manager stuff because I really think people put too much on managers, both good and bad, like too much praise, too much criticism. And it's just it's a fun conversation to kind of sort through. So lay out what you did on YouTube yesterday and what you did on Scoops.
Well, basically, I kind of made, this was actually 2 big points to make in one video and one column or whatever. And let's start with the reason my jumping off point on this is I came across a note, thanks to Fansided. I had already done a note on how Pujols is doing in the Dominican Winter League as a manager. I had written that at scoopsnetwork.com, and that his team is 21-20. But what I didn't realize at the time, they had lost 15 out of their last 21 games, or 16 out of their last 21 games. So they're slumping. Well, Escogido, that team has a very passionate, very intense fan base, and they're up in arms because they're blaming Pujols for this slide that team's in, and they're saying he should be fired. So here's a guy, one of the greatest people in the history of the game, performance-wise, and the person that he is, especially what he became as he matured. And he's a DR dude, and it's like they want to sack him after 41 games. It's Albert Pujols. It's his first time as a manager, okay? They won't even cut any slack in the DR. And so Mike Rodriguez, a longtime broadcaster and reporter down there, basically was taking fans of that team to task. It's, basically like, you can't turn on this guy. What are you doing? So that sort of circles back to your point about how people just go ape over managers. They go absolutely bananas over managers. And even in the Dominican Republic, it happens everywhere. So I took that as a launch point. And then part 2 was like, well, for people that think, and again, I'm guilty to being a bad boy. I've mentioned, well, is there a chance Pujols or Yadi or Molina, who's doing his team's right there with Pujols, but it's not considered to be as talented down in the Dominican Winter League. So you could say the case, Yadi's getting more out of his team than Albert. We're also talking about 3 dozen games. So anyway, so I've stirred up the pot, say, because I think one day maybe Pujols or Molina could manage the Cardinals. I just don't know when. I don't know what the timetables are. But the point that needs to be made, and every time I make it, I get attacked. Because even if you say something like, well, Oli Marmol last year really did a hell of a job running that Cardinals bullpen, you get attacked. Oh, you're carrying his water. Oh, you're a stooge for Marmol. So
I got accused, by the way. I got accused of using his phone to text the other day because I actually didn't rip him.
And my point is that, I've blasted Marmol a lot. It doesn't matter with the percentage of fans. And again, I don't want to put every fan under the same umbrella. The percentage of fans who really despise this guy are adamant. So if Kevin Wheeler or Bernie Miklasz, unless we say every time we bring him up, he's the worst manager in the history of Major League Baseball. He's totally worthless and useless. He's the reason they lose games. He's terrible. So unless you or I and anyone else in the media says that every time about Oli Marmol, we are on the payroll or something. People are cuckoo when it comes to managers. My point and people, and I actually think I'm doing a public service here, right? He's got a much better better chance of keeping his job than people want to admit, especially the haters who despise him. They get real personal about it. He's got a much better shot at keeping his job than people want to acknowledge. Because look, he's going to have a young team, a younger team. I think that's more suitable for him. I think he's already has a good bond with the younger players on that team, and I think that would increase their chances of doing better. Now, the problem with Oli and the Cardinals in 2025, if those young players slide more, they don't get better. Then you can say, well, fair or not, why aren't these guys getting better with Marmol? So there's a chance that 2025 could backfire as well. Fairly or not, because it might be that the players aren't good as the Cardinals say they are. But the other part to this is if the young players do well and the Cardinals exceed expectations, why in the world would they fire Marmol? They wouldn't, okay? They wouldn't. There's a chance maybe if the team treads water, the young players continue to be mediocre or whatever you want to say. The other thing people don't realize, and not that I expect them to, quite frankly, I think Bloom really likes Marmol. And I'm not saying that it's like no matter what, he'll keep him for the final 2 years. I'm not saying that at all. But Marmol is already got a good rapport established with the people that Chaim Bloom have hired because Oli Marmol is really into player development, and his background and all this other stuff is like he's really interested in it, and they're keeping him in the loop. They reach out to him for his opinion on stuff. Chaim Bloom likes Oli Marmol. So I don't know what's going to happen with the 2025 Cardinals. I have no idea. But Marmol's got a better chance to get into 2026 than people want to believe, because they want to believe he's going to be fired. In fact, some of them will want to believe, like, if they lose the first series of the season, that means you should fire him. I mean, it's just like, so I don't know. It's a very interesting situation to me, because I think Bloom's got more respect for him than maybe a segment of Cardinals fans do.
Yeah. I would say
I'm sorry to go on so long there, my friend.
No, that's great. That's exactly what I wanted. I wanted you to lay that out and set it up. And because it leads me to where I'm going to step up on a soapbox for a second, because my position on Oli Marmol is simple. I'm agnostic. I don't know yet. We can't know yet. 3 years is not enough to judge a manager on. If you ask Dodgers fans about Dave Roberts in 2019, they all hated him and wanted him fired. And now they've won 2 World Series since then, and Dave Roberts is going to the Hall of Fame, which, by the way, he will now. With his regular season record being in LA and 2 World Series, he's a Hall of Fame manager now.
No doubt.
But a few years ago, Dodgers fans thought he was an idiot. He's a stooge for the front office. He doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, like, you cannot know until you know. There are a lot of great managers who started off poorly, and Oli hasn't started off poorly. It's just average. It's 500-ish. It's a little bit above 500. But it comes down to a psychology to me, Bern. And it's this: if we just change this one guy, we'd be better. And it's the easiest thing to change, right? Changing rosters is hard. We talked about it with the Blues yesterday, right? In hockey, the difference is that teams actually do that. They actually change coaches all the time. But I'm telling you, the manager is not the problem. So when the Cardinals won 93 games in Oli's first year, it was when Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado were MVPs, and Adam Wainwright was 190 innings of a 3.72 ERA.
Miklasz was good, too.
And Miklasz was good. And then the next year.
And Pujols.
Right. And Albert
in 2024, in 2022,
Albert had the most miraculous second half we've probably seen in the last 40 years of Cardinals baseball. And all of that happened. And so the manager's fine. Gee, I wonder why. The next
until game one of the Philadelphia series.
And again, there are clear complaints, by the way, and very fair ones too. But it's about body of work, as you well know. Second year, the entire pitching staff implodes. The bullpen falls apart. You can't protect leads. The rotation completely falls apart. Gee, what happens to the record? Well, the record goes down. The next year, the pitching balances out, settles down. It's better. It's not great, but it's better. But your 2 stars don't hit. You're an 83-win team. So to me, it's pretty obvious. It's about the players.
Mostly.
It always is. Skip Schumacher, who is every Cardinals fan's favorite guy, won the Manager of the Year in 2023 in the National League. Manager of the Year. They just lost 100 games in 2024 the following year. You think it's the manager or do you think it's the players? What changed? You think Skip changed? That's not how it works, man. And you know that you and I both have this great respect for like the legendary managers. You spent your time growing up watching Earl Weaver, who's one of my favorites, not just because he's kicking dirt all over the plate and losing it, but because he was ahead of his time. He's really smart. And we watched Billy Martin and we watched Tony La Russa, who's a little later than those guys. Whitey Herzog. And I watched Sparky Anderson my whole life. I love Sparky Anderson, not just because he was really good at it, but he also hit it here. And to me, my favorite Sparky quote of all time is, "The players make the manager. It's never the other way." And he's right. Find me in any sport, in any era, any manager or head coach that won anything without great players. They don't exist.
Listen, the front office gave Marmol a good team in 2022, and some of the old guys came through in a big way, as you noted. And that's also when Donovan and Newt Barr came to the majors and Gorman, and they were really good right away, okay? And there's some other factors we could talk about. In 2023, the Cardinals front office failed to put together a decent starting rotation. They were neglectful. They were also neglectful in the bullpen because they signed some guys, but they didn't really sign good relievers. So what happened? And so I don't know why anyone – listen, I didn't expect them to go 71-91.
Right.
But when you look back on it, just how awful, horrendous that pitching – in fact, Cardinals starting pitching in 2023 was the worst in the history of the franchise going back to 1900 in one season. It was a 5.06 or 5.08 ERA, starting pitcher, right? The worst in the history of the St. Louis Cardinals in a season. Who in the heck is so stupid they're putting that on Oli Marmol? That was about the roster construction, right? Now, last year, okay, the bullpen, okay, the rotation got better. Not saying it was awesome, but it got better. That's because John Mozeliak went out and they spent some money and they got 3 veteran starting pitchers who were capable guys, okay? With Chaim Bloom's influence, they actually made some really smart, overlooked at the time, really smart bullpen pickups, right? So all of a sudden, they gave this manager a competitive pitching staff, especially the bullpen. And, geez, what happened? Instead of going 76 and 86 based on run differential, they won 83 and 76. They had one of the very best records in baseball when they led a game after 7 innings and when they led a game after 8 innings. Talent makes a huge difference. The only fault I had with Marmol in 2023 is that he let the defense and the base running slide.
Yeah, gotta stay on that.
And he wasn't on top of the fundamentals enough. But he learned his lesson, and they were much better in both areas this past season. So, I will remind people, even though Tony La Russa was already a legend before he came to St. Louis, right? Did a good job with the White Sox. He obviously did a good job with the A's.
Yep.
Oli Marmol has got a higher winning percentage after 3 seasons than Tony La Russa had his first 3 seasons in St. Louis.
You're not allowed to say that.
No, I can't. And that's after Bill DeWitt taking over and his partners. They made they spent a lot of money on free agents. They also made trades at Tony's request to bring in some of those A's guys and whatever. Tony had, frankly, he had a lot more, and they got McGuire in 97. He had a lot more to work with. He really, truly did. Some things went wrong. They were below expectation. And again, I know La Russa had the credibility coming into town, and I love Tony La Russa. Oli Marmol won more games in his first 3 seasons than Tony La Russa, but you're right. Don't you dare say that. Don't you? You'll be arrested. Federal authorities will be storming your home any minute now if you dare say that. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's the Gashouse Gang, and obviously Bernie Miklasz, Kevin Wheeler here, and of course with the 2 of us, Bernie, we've already run long, so we'll put a short wrap on it. But before we do
That's my fault.
No, it's both of us. We're equal. We're both long-winded and like to talk.
Only one thing I'm going to say real quick: 125th Army Navy game tomorrow.
There we go. That's
great stuff. Got to watch it. It.
It's got a good showcase, and I just with all of that. Let's close on Saliga and thanking them for being a part of the Gashouse Gang.
Yeah, they're supporting us, and I know others will be doing as well as we get rolling, and we're doing better and better and better. as far as getting the word out. But Saliga Heating and Cooling is an independent American standard air conditioning. Here I am fumbling already. See, you told me we're running out of times, right?
Sorry.
They're independent American standard heating and air conditioning dealer. I should have this stuff memorized anyway. But they've been serving St. Louis families since 1927, including the Miklas's for the last 16 years or so. They've built a great reputation. You're not still growing and thriving and having more people call you if you're bad at your job or you're not trustworthy. Are you kidding me? From 1927 to 2024, and they're still growing. They've passed every credibility test there is, and I can testify to that, being a Saliga family. The only thing I would say is one more time, look into that Priority Club. It's a maintenance program that has some perks with it. It'll save you money in the long run, and it'll also make it more convenient for you to get help when you need to get help. Financing options are available, subject to credit approval. To find out a lot more, just go to SaligaHeatingandCooling.com, SaligaHeatingandCooling.com. Thank you, Kev.
Oh, glad to do it. Obviously, we got a lot to do on Monday. Who knows what will happen between now and then, but on Monday, it'll be a Cardinals Monday with Bernie and me and Tom Ackerman and Matt Pauley, who is now back in town from Dallas after the winter meetings. So we'll look forward to having a big Monday. Everybody have a great weekend. Bernie, go Navy. I got your back.
Go Navy. Go Navy.
Go Navy.
They've lost 6 out of the last 8, but I think tomorrow will be a competitive game. They're both pretty good teams. Army is better though, and hat tip to them. They've had what a year they've had.
Yeah, phenomenal year. Well, you enjoy that tomorrow. Have a great weekend. Everybody else have a great weekend. We'll catch you Monday when we have a Cardinals Monday with the Gashouse Gang.